Suicide is a real epidemic. The annual suicide count is just above 49,000, and that number is only growing. On average, it's about 135 per day. But that all got me thinking. What are some of the oldest recorded suicides in history? I'm sure plenty of people might have heard of Van Gogh's suicide, and most definitely Romeo and Juliet's tragic end in 1303. However, the emo painter died much more recently in 1890. I'm sorry to tell you kids, but Romeo and Juliet weren't real. So with records of suicide dating so far back, even fictional suicides, it begs the question, when did it all start? Now, while I may share a lot of qualities with sociopaths like chronic apathy, I'm not immune to society imposing its standards of morality on me. So to earn a few virtue tokens, I'm going to be putting a suicide hotline in the description of this video for anyone as down bad for the sweet release of death as myself. Additionally, I'd like to mention I'm going to be pulling a bit of a Logan Paul in this video. Making light of the deaths of many people throughout history, so if suicide or my perpetually cheery demeanor upsets you, you might want to move along so I can talk to the niche audience of curious sociopaths and existentially disenchanted youth. Some of the oldest suicides I could find documentation on took place in the Greek colony of Malaysia around 600 BC. Citizens could go and apply to the Senate for suicide, and if you were able to give a valid reason for your premature departure, you'd be granted a nice little dime bag of hemlock to smoke at your leisure or brew into tea, whatever works for you, really. And here we are, millennia later, implementing the same kind of strategy with the discount suicide booth, or sarcopods as they call them. Available now for 3 easy payments of $2.99 and your mortal soul. Now, back in 600 BC, they didn't have fancy booths being sold to them by charming salesmen like myself. So they had to make do with what they had. And to maximize the results, they decided to get creative. Many implemented daggers, swords, and the like. But the wife of a Brutus Porcian decided to get especially theatrical and swallowed hot coals. Feel free to bring that up next time someone complains about the Mexican food they ate. Now, speaking of uncomfortable bowel movements, according to a letter written by Senka, a German captive offed himself by jabbing a fecal brush down his throat. Now, there's gotta be some shitty ways to die, but this really takes the cake. The most noteworthy suicide was a playwright by the name of Senka. After his alleged plans to kill his former pupil didn't pan out, he was only really left with a couple of options. He chose the old vertical stripes on the wrists and ankles. After doing this, he realized two things that most people bleeding out realize. One, ouch, that hurts. And two, this is taking hours. So being the smart cookie he was, he hopped in the sauna to stop the bleeding, and wouldn't you know it, he actually died from the steam. Now that's what I call a heated situation. Anyway, as much as I'd like to continue ranting on about the wacky antics of the ancient Greeks, we've got a lot more wanton bloodshed and senseless disregard for the sanctity of life to get into. So without further ado, let's move on to another area. Now for all you weebs and Japanophiliacs out there, we're going to be taking a look back at the 12th century Japan. So get out your samurai swords and other accessories that affirm your obsession, because we're talking about seppuku! Well, Japan might not crack the top 10 for highest suicide rates, it's still the leading cause of death for men 20 to 40. So even though Japan might seem like a fun place to live, I'm sure we can all be glad that we're far more likely to die from heart disease and a poorly structured healthcare system than a broken heart. Unlike the previous suicides in feudal Japan, the adherence to ritual is much more strict, this being in part due to the fact that it was widely believed a person's spirit was hosted in the stomach, making a nightmare colonoscopy the most effective way to free your spirit as well as the bravest. One consistent trend you'll notice throughout history is that the more valued members of society, such as samurai, were given much different treatment when regarding suicide. While samurai were permitted to perform their little soul enema to avoid capture or dishonor, commoners had to resort to hanging or drowning, which seems rather difficult to enforce, but hey, if it works, it works. An interesting facet of ritualistic suicide was the death poem, or OG murder rap, as I like to call it. It was believed that those about to die had great insight about life, so samurai were required to write a poem that didn't concern their death for the sake of posterity. Kinda cool when you think about it. Not only are you gonna die, but now you have a homework assignment as well. I personally can't read Japanese, but given that these edgelords were about to kick the bucket, one can assume that at least some of these poems were absolute bangers. When you take it all into consideration, you gotta ask yourself, was developing the kind of chemically infused flesh ball that can solve a math equation really worth developing a greater affinity for despair and hopelessness? Food for thought, in case anyone's hungry. What do you know about the Middle Ages? Contestant number one.
Oh God, somebody, please help me.
Wrong answer! Don't make me come over there. Anyway, aside from quirky torture methods and humans treating each other like animals, actually it's not all that different from modern day. Anyway, Rome fell hard around 476 CE and didn't have Life Alert on standby, so it wasn't getting up all too soon. Meanwhile, Europe started fondly reminiscing about Rome, much like we do when our elders trudge down the path of becoming a memory. But unlike our elders, Rome had cool art and scientific discoveries. Anyway, boom, Middle Ages. All the parts of the world that people cared about were doing knight things and armor with swords, and the Black Death is inspiring interesting new fashion trends. But hey, I'm not here to talk to you about horses, knights, and weird political structures. I'm here to talk about suicides. Now, I was expecting this era to have some of the zaniest suicides yet. And you know what? I was right. There were only 198 cases found, and 8 were accidents, so 190. What can I say? The game will change, but the players stay the same. Men are killing themselves more than women with more dangerous tools. Maybe it's just me, but something about the testosterone stuff in my body has me worried about the state of my mental health. You think I should see a doctor? Who am I kidding? Now, unlike the free-loving hippies of the Greek era, the dogmatic Christians wanted to wash their paws the whole suicide idea. Woof. In fact, these God-fearing Jesus simps hated the idea so much, they kicked you while you were down. Your burial plot? Gone. Your Timbs? Gone. The thing you used to kill yourself? Gone. Must have been pretty awkward in circumstances of death by night. Poor guy loses his sword and gets traumatized. Now, the medical documentation on these suicides is more batshit backwards than guano, and I don't think Adam West or anyone with a modicum of understanding vis-a-vis mental health could listen to the references of frenzies and madness without gritting their teeth, but it was an important part of the church's decision for if someone was responsible for that little dying stunt they pulled. Or, maybe it was just illness like salmonella. Here comes the boring part. Old-timey explanations of a suicide. William D. Wedmore hanged himself in his home. The verdict was suicide. Walter D. Wedmore and John, his brothers, buried the said William without view of the coroner, and took his chattels, valued at around 34 silver. So they are to be arrested. Afterwards, they came to the court, and the sheriff let them go. Typical story, some regular hobo Johnson had a little too much to think, and his family doesn't want to fork over the goods for King Edward Longshit. Luckily, the courts let them off with a warning. God is good. I'll give you this. While medieval suicides lack in quantity, they made up for in style. Thomas, son of Henry, in a frenzy, cut off his left foot with an axe in his left hand in good old Henry's house. He died the following night. Now, if you ask me, an arm and a leg is a bad price for any product. But you know who doesn't charge you a mortally wounding price for their product? Today's sponsor, Mental Health America. Do you want to do more for the people you love? For your friends? Family? Even your coworkers are susceptible to crisis. You never know who may be in need of help, so donate to Mental Health America today. For a better America. I probably have to mention that I'm not sponsored by them, at least not yet. Well, anyway, I've met people who try to go 8 days without eating, and I've met models. Models are usually more successful in doing it, and could probably give a few tips to this next guy, who, once in prison, starved himself for 8 days, but man must have been thinner than Joaquin Phoenix. Anyway, another fun fact, no recorded instances of poisoning were uncovered, but if I trusted every doctor who dressed like a bird, I wouldn't have any internal organs left. I mean, all I wanted was a nose job, and he didn't even fix the paint. Well, that wraps up this video. Class dismissed. Thanks for watching, and no, I will not cite my sources. Fuck you, Mrs. Geraldstein. That assignment was worth half my fucking grade. And that's in the next video, anyway. Religion and me being mean to Christians. Go watch it. What was her name? Mrs. Baker? I don't know.
Don't say yes if you can't say no. Victim of the system, say it isn't so. Squatted on the doorstep, swallowed all the blood. Leaving without you, can't say no. Halfway starts with happiness for me. Halfway house, lost kitten in the street. Hit me where it hurts, I'm coming home to lose. Kitten on the catwalk, high-heeled shoes. No more hard-headed Saturdays. They got it, they want it, they give